Hello, and welcome to this part of the acceptance and grieving section. This is going to be all about accepting the fact that your mother is not going to change. Just a reminder to look after yourself as you're doing this work. This is a tough topic. Make sure that you're keeping in place all of those basic foundations that we need to be emotionally well. Make sure you're getting enough sleep, going out in nature, spending time outdoors, getting enough social contact, enough time on your own, enough rest, just keeping all of those things in place as you go through this material. Now, before we get started, I do just want to say that despite this topic, accepting that your mother is not going to change, I do believe people can change, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this work in the first place. I have experienced real and sustained change myself. I've seen it in lots of my clients, in people who've done my courses, in friends, and so on. So it's absolutely possible. And it may be that you're listening to this or watching this and thinking, actually, my mother is changing, or she has changed. Maybe she has sought some kind of support or some kind of help. Perhaps she is taking more accountability for herself. Maybe she's able to talk openly with you about your experiences as a child. Maybe you've seen her over a long period of time reflecting. And in other words, there have been lots of signs that she really is working on making some changes within herself. And that is brilliant, in which case this may not be a useful section for you. But if you fall into a different camp, and if you know that your mother is not going to change, perhaps she doesn't have the capacity to, perhaps she doesn't have the resources to, within herself or externally in a practical sense, perhaps she doesn't have the resources to get some help, perhaps she sees no need for her to change, she doesn't recognize the negative impact of her behaviors, then this is for you. And I really do hope that this section brings something useful and something of comfort. So, accepting that your mother is not going to change brings its own unique type of loss, because it adds to the loss we've already acknowledged, which is the compounded and repeated loss of what you needed from your mother and then what she was able to give you, and kind of the gap in between, the sadness and the loss around that. But when we're saying she's never going to be able to offer that, what we're doing is we're losing hope. And losing hope feels really painful. It feels quite scary sometimes, because hope is an important part of the human experience. We need hope. Hope is what can help us manage situations that feel unmanageable. It's what can help you to kind of keep going, if you like. But sometimes, on occasion, hope kind of buddies up with denial, and the function of it is that it stops us from connecting with reality. And what we're wanting to do in this section of the healing method is to really help you to connect with your reality, past and present. And so therefore, we do need to find a way to kind of manage this loss of this hope. And something I would offer in suggestion is that you can transfer some of that energy, or maybe all of that energy you've perhaps used for many years, going towards, your mother changing, becoming more aware, becoming maybe seeing things from your point of view, becoming more attuned to you, becoming more available, whatever it might be. All of that energy, all of that hope that was directed towards her, you can transfer that to yourself and point that towards yourself, so that instead it becomes about hope for your growth, hope for things to change in the ways that you hope they will, hope that you will maybe have a more peaceful life, maybe have more acceptance for yourself, whatever it might be that you're wanting. That instead we don't completely lose and let go of that hope. We're just pointing it in a different direction instead. But this is a really hard aspect of healing. So that was just kind of an offering that can help it feel a little bit more manageable, but it is a difficult thing. And part of accepting that your mother isn't going to change involves accepting more of who she is as a person rather than as a mother. Often, as children, all children have a really understandable and strong investment in seeing their mother as really just their mother. If you kind of talk to maybe a 4-year-old or maybe even a little bit older, maybe 6-7-year-old about their mother before they were born, it's quite a strange concept for a child, because the world in a child's mind started when they were born, which is logical, right? Their world did start when they were born. Of course, as we get older, we shift into understanding that the world existed before us and that other people existed before us. But if we've had wounding with our mother during childhood, we can get stuck in this phase of just seeing her as our mother. And actually what we want to do in part of the healing process is shifting across to seeing her as a person, first and foremost, seeing her as a person with her own traumas, her own coping strategies, her own ways of relating, of making sense of the world. And this is empowering in terms of you and your healing, because although there's something familiar perhaps about seeing your mother as your mother and then seeing kind of all of the bits that she wasn't able to offer, and the gap between you and her and your needs and her offerings of meeting those needs, we kind of, obviously we're here working on that gap. But what that can do also is it keeps us stuck, and it keeps us wanting there to be some resolution, there to be some change. But actually, if you can start thinking of your mother as I say, a person first and foremost, then it puts you into that adult position, which ultimately is more sturdy, it's more strong, it's more kind of likely to move you forwards into a useful place, and it's going to be more supportive of your healing ultimately. But I do acknowledge, of course, all of the loss in all of this. Again, losing that image you maybe have had of her for a really long time, or losing that sense that you have of her. It's likely that you've kind of organised your mother in a certain way in your mind, as we do with everybody we're in relationships with, but we especially do with those when they're difficult relationships. We have to kind of organise them in a certain way in our mind to manage that relationship. And so what we're talking about here is that you're going to be changing the way your mother is organised in your mind a little bit. So that can take a minute. It can feel really difficult. It can feel like a big loss. Take your time, pause this video or any of them as and when you need to. Do this in your own time in a way that is manageable for you and your nervous system. And lastly, I just want to remind you that your mother does not need to change in order for you to feel better, in order for you to get some resolution. You don't need answers from your mother. You may want them, which is completely human and understandable, but it is not required for you to feel better, lighter, for you to ultimately kind of move forward and move past your mother wound. So as we think about the fact that she's not going to change, with that sometimes can come this sense of, well, I'm never going to understand then, or she's never going to understand. I'm never going to get that piece of empathy from her, or I'm never going to have that knowledge that she gets it, that she sees things from my point of view, that she understands the impact that she's had, or that she understands my struggles. And I know that that is a really human part of the healing process, and it's a really human desire to want your mother to understand. And so as we talk about this idea that she's not going to change and that she therefore probably will not understand, it can feel really quite alarming. But let's just remind ourselves, and I'll remind you, that you do not need that in order to heal. Just trust yourself, trust this process, and as we move through this material, it will become clearer, and hopefully things will start slotting into place. And this has been one of the more challenging parts of the journey. So well done for doing all of these modules in this accepting and grieving part, and I really hope that it's been helpful for you, and I will see you in the next section.